What was that?
You ready?
All right, Sister Lisa Gould, welcome. I am delighted to interview you during what is Calvary's second in a series of interviews in celebration of 165 years of ministry.
So hard to believe. Oh, my goodness.
165 years, so let's put that in perspective. We're talking 100 years is a century, all right? So we're talking more than a century and a half,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And so there's a lot of folks that this ministry has impacted over the years.
Yes.
And so what we're going to do today is just kind of take a walk. I almost hesitate to say down memory lane per se, but I know that you are a longtime Ithacan, and so we want to have you tell us a little bit about that. You, more than a lot of people, will have a longitudinal perspective that goes back a lot longer than most of us, because a lot of us are transplants, right?
Yeah.
But we'll get into the details of that a little bit. So 165 years, what about your own personal connection to Calvary would you like to share?
Well, it's thank you so much for doing this, and I'm thankful to be a part of this. And hard to believe that my 63 years are part of it. So I've been
63 years.
Yes.
So you've been connected to this church for 6 decades and 3 years.
Yes.
That is awesome. You
or
know, not
shy of 6 years.
okay. All right.
When
So
that I lived away, but
okay. So it's not. You know. So to put this in perspective, there's not a lot of folk in this congregation right now at the 9 o'clock or the 11 o'clock service that can say that they have been personally connected to this church for over 60 years. That's a long time.
yes.
So
And I've lived so much of it that I don't think about a lot of it, but I've started to think of, memories that I've had and involvements that I've had here and people that have impacted my life.
okay. Well, over the next several minutes that we're talking, we definitely want to hear a lot about that. So let's back up a little bit. So 60-something years. So are you a native Ithacan?
I am. Yep. Born and raised.
In proximity of the church, downtown area?
Yes, matter of fact, most of my years have been right around the corner on Cascadilla Street.
Oh, so y'all got to
But-
walk to church.
Yes,
All
we
right.
do.
Okay, that's
We're
good.
one of the railroad locals.
Well,
in
let me
the
ask you
area.
this. Since you live so close, were y'all always on time?
My grandfather, yes. My mother, yes. Me, when I was a child, yes.
Okay, I got
Sometimes
it. All righty. Well, you couldn't use the, well, my car wouldn't start excuse for being late, right?
Exactly,
Instead of walk right around the corner. So that's funny. You know, laughter is good for the soul.
Very good.
So,
very good.
so 60-something years, you're a native Ithacan,
Yep.
grew up in close proximity to the church, so there was a family connection to Calvary Baptist Church.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about
Yes.
that.
Well, my family is my maternal family. On my mom's side is the Scotts,
Okay.
and a lot of people know Edward and Annie Scott.
Oh, yes.
And my grandmother Annie, she belonged to St. James AME Zion Church. She worshipped there, and she was a member there for many, many years until her health started declining, and she was no longer able to go up the stairs. And so she became, and she was very much a homebody. Loved caring for her home. Loved having her children and her grandchildren and great-grandchildren around. And my grandfather, the influence he had on my life was music.
Wow.
He loved the music of the church. He directed the junior choir. In his day, there's a picture in the narthex of Calvary in this building that has a picture of the junior choir, and it's dated 1949.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was 10 years before I was born.
Wow. Now, is that the picture that has Lucy Brown in it?
Yes.
And I'm trying to think of some. How about your mom and your aunts? Or
Now, my mom, she was not the singer.
Okay.
She had a very loud voice, but she didn't sing.
But her two
But her two
sisters did.
sisters
There you
did.
go.
Yes.
What were they called? What was the group?
Oh, my cousin's going to kill me. Love, I think Love Notes or
Love Notes, something like that.
Something
Peggy
like that,
Love,
or the
right? Love
Buds.
Notes. Okay, right. Yeah. Okay. So your mom wasn't quite the singer. Okay.
Right.
But anyway, that picture that's out in the narthex, so Mr. Scott is in that picture as well?
He is. He's, matter of fact, on the very first row, right in the center.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. So you talk about Ed Scott. I mean, my goodness. Baritone, is that what he was?
I believe so. Is that?
Oh,
Yes.
my goodness. That man had the most amazing voice.
He
Right.
had.
And he was just so cool.
Yes,
Just
he was.
cool. Never in a hurry. Never in a hurry. Ed Scott. And
He
I'll-
passed that on to you
say
in
again?
terms of the coolness.
Oh, thank you. But you know what? So as you may recall, I was in the male chorus. I was about to say I sang in the male chorus, but I think I mostly hummed and moved my lips.
Yes.
But anyway, so Ed Scott was certainly the director of that, and very, very fond memories of him and all the many ways that he served a trustee and music and so many other ways, and recording,
Yes.
right? Recording the sermons
He
and the
started
various
that.
services.
He treated it like a ministry. He didn't call it that, but later in life I thought of it that way. And he would, I think he even purchased the board
Right.
itself himself with his own funds.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day of cassettes, he would tape the services, the Sunday service. I think he would tape either the whole service or at least part of the singing and the sermon, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would deliver that to those that were in sick and
To the
shut
sick,
in.
right,
Just did it
absolutely.
on his own.
You know, it was a tremendous ministry, and Mr. Scott just really epitomized a person who, just in their own quiet way, did things that needed to be done because he knew that, look, there's some folks that can't get here.
Right.
And so, obviously, we weren't, this was way before live streaming and all these other kind of
For
things.
sure.
And so, as you say, he took the initiative to make sure that the services were recorded and delivered to the sick and shut in. And I served on the deacon board here for 28 years, and I remember we used to, when we would go do communion with the sick and shut in, we would also give them the copy of the cassettes that Mr. Scott had. Yeah, Mr. Scott had made. And then he also, I think, perhaps with his own funds, got that duplicating machine where we can make multiple copies of the
That's
cassettes, right?
Yes.
And then get them out. So just an incredible influence, and the apple or the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, so to speak. Your grandfather just left such an amazing legacy. So native of Ithaca, grew up right around the corner, family connected to Calvary. Talk about some of your earliest memories of coming here. And who was the pastor when you came? Do you recall?
Actually, Reverend Payne was the pastor for, I think, very short time. I have a hard time sometimes remembering actual years.
Okay.
But I remember him being the pastor.
So you were a little girl at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you remember if you were like in elementary school or middle school age?
Probably elementary school, like
Okay.
young elementary.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember the building, this building before it was renovated, before the renovation. And
Wow. You know, I've seen pictures of it pre-renovation. So what do you remember most about the old building? So as you look at the building from outside now, what renovation do you recall having happened?
I remember, you mean the renovation that actually happened or what it was prior to that?
Well, right. So you remember the renovation. You came here before the renovation started.
Right.
What was the major feature of the renovation? Was it a new front or the new brick, or what was it? Do you recall?
That what I remember is like there were steps that led down into the basement, so that of course you could go back out.
Okay.
They were like on the side of the church, so as you're facing the church, it was like on the left-hand side.
I see.
That's one of the things that I remember. Let's see, probably new brick. But I also remember in the dining hall, the tables and chairs that we had, especially the chairs, they were really old wooden chairs.
I see.
And the thing I remember is that, of course, back in the day, us young ladies had to wear stockings or pantyhose or tights and all that. So quite a few of us, and especially some of the older women, they would complain about the chairs snagging.
Right. Okay, it was a good thing they made that change. How about that? So, right. So you were here pre renovation. So yeah, that's part of the long history of your being here at Calvary. So well, you're very actively involved in some of the ministries of Calvary right now. You serve various roles, which we're going to want you to talk about. But did you? What are some of the earliest memories you have of being involved? Was it a children's choir? Was it a junior usher board? I mean, what was your entree to service and active ministry here at Calvary?
One of them that I can remember is junior choir, and that was led by, my brother was involved with that, as well as our dear late Reverend Clarence Welch.
Oh, okay.
And he was he was very firm about singing the songs and how they went, and my grandfather was like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember that, and I also remember being in Sunday school and learning the Easter pieces
Mm-hmm.
and Christmas plays,
Mm-hmm.
and also I'm jumping back to prior to the renovation, remembering a couple of things. Back then there was this play, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I can remember some of our older members who have not gone on to be with the Lord that were in that play, like Mrs. Vivian Morgan.
Oh, wow.
And I can't remember. There were a bunch of other. Matter of fact, Deacon Blanton.
They were in a play that was presented here.
Yes.
Wow, I wish I'd been here to see that.
And that was, I think, when Reverend Payne was pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I most associate you with is the choir, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. When did you become involved with the music ministry of the church?
I'd say I was probably about 9 or 10. It was funny. I was thinking of that recently. It's like, oh my goodness, Lisa, you've been doing this stuff a long time.
Right. So is that you had just talked about the children's choir with Clarence Welch and who else did you say was involved?
Let's see. No, I'm trying to think. Was my Aunt Peggy? No, Sister Dorothy Bibby. She
Okay.
was our pianist.
Well, she was a pianist. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so you started with the church choir, with the children's choir rather.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And do you remember graduating to the young adult or the adult choir?
Yes, I remember. We had a strong student involvement, especially under the pastorate of Reverend McLean, and
When you say students, you're talking about high school or college?
college students.
College, okay.
Thank you
Cornell
very
and Ithaca College? Or
I
one
think
of-
mostly Cornell.
Mostly Cornell at that time? Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so quite a few of them ran the music ministry, I think, for the adult choir. And then, we had musicians. We had one of the directors was Wendell Stone, and he was a student here. And Alwyn Crawford, I think his last name was, and he was a student here as well. And there was a fellow named Henry that's coming back to mind, and quite a few other students as well. So I was involved in that. I think prior to going away to business school.
Prior to going away to business school?
Yes.
Okay, now that's interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. So this is post high school that you're talking, going away to business school. You had graduated.
Prior to that, so it would have been prior to graduating from high school.
Oh, okay. And you went away to business school while you were still high school age?
Oh no. I'm probably not telling this where it's making most sense. But I was in this choir prior to going away to business school.
Oh, I see. I
graduated
see what you're
from
saying.
high school.
Got
I was
it.
in high school, I think,
Got it.
and then
Okay. Yeah.
graduated and then went away to school for a couple of years.
Yeah, just kind of as an aside, when you talk about student involvement in the choir ministry, I came here in 1980, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the name I most associate as a college student was Angelise Eccles.
Yes.
You remember Angelise?
Yes. She
Right.
was our director. as well
Okay.
as one of the singers. I think she had a soprano voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did not play.
She did not play. She did not play. And by the way, she actually, after graduation, I don't know how soon after graduation from Cornell, went to Los Angeles and has just created an amazing educational program called Educating Young Minds, EYM. And I've actually been out to LA twice to visit the school. She's doing an amazing job right on Wilshire Boulevard out in LA right now. So, all right, so you, so we're talking about your active involvement here. So far, we have focused on music. Well, I know right now you doing the announcements.
Yes.
And so, and you're still involved in the praise team.
Yes.
Right, so you're still very connected to the music ministry.
Right.
So music ministry, doing the announcements. If I'm not mistaken, you have, let's talk about some of the other things that you've done. Didn't you, were you, I remember you taking a bunch of minutes at something. Were you?
Oh my goodness, yes.
So what was that role?
That was my role as church clerk.
Church clerk.
Yes.
See, there you go.
Yes. And actually, yes, that was considered church clerk at the time. And that was one of my least favorite things to do. Even today, I told Pastor Wright, I said, I'll do anything except take the minutes. I think because I try to take down everything instead of just taking down points.
Yeah. But you did it. You did it, and that's important because so many times, there are critical roles within organizations, and the church as an organism, of course, but where there are just things that need to be done, and so many times, people are reluctant to do it. And so hats off to you for assuming a responsibility, taking on a role. It wasn't your favorite thing to do, but you did it to the best of your ability, right? And so I think there's a scripture reference that says, in all that we do, do it as unto the Lord, right?
Exactly.
And so, so we got music ministry, you're doing church announcements now, you were the church clerk. You also, if I'm not mistaken, played a role with the church newsletter.
Yes,
there you go. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That was, oh my goodness, I so enjoy that. And it was founded and edited by somebody named Cal Walker.
I know that guy. I heard of him. Yeah. No, that was I loved it. I loved creating, putting together the church newsletter on a regular basis. It was stressful at times because we had timelines to meet and stuff like this. But I especially enjoyed the articles. You submitted a bunch of material. We had a bunch of pictures in there, and we tried to capture things that were really reflective of the multiple aspects of ministry coming from this place, which were great and numerous and continue to be, right?
How many years did we do that?
Lisa,
to remember.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I don't recall, but I have looked at the first one that was done on a typewriter.
Right.
Right.
I was gonna say,
And with
speak to that. Yeah.
Right. So at a typewriter, and we had the little cutout, like the images and things that you would paste right onto the paper, and that kind of thing. So we started really crudely. And then as computer technology and stuff, and publishing programs and all that kind of stuff, we were able to become a little bit more sophisticated. So yeah, I distinctly remember you working with the Insights newsletter. So
I have to say that one of the things that I really enjoyed about that was like you said, starting it with the typewriter, and that you're so committed to getting as much in as possible, or things that had a time. That was going to be timely for that moment. That you would have an actual typewriter with you.
Absolutely.
At the printing.
At the printing, yeah, absolutely. That's right. I distinctly remember it was a Saturday. We needed to get it copied. I wasn't done. See, the thing is, I knew the place was going to close at a certain time.
Right.
I said, well, if I'm in there, they're not going to lock me in, right? They're going to stay, right? And so I was there balancing that typewriter on my knee, trying to finish the article, print it out so we can get that last page in the newsletter. Oh, my goodness.
The other part of that I enjoyed about that was us coming together as a group at your home. And the times that we would be putting the newsletter together.
That's right.
And I also want to give kudos to my dear sister Janie.
Janie, absolutely.
Who, when I think you were took a leave or something.
I did.
And we, and so we co-edited.
Absolutely.
For you, and yeah.
Yeah, that's good. You know, that is absolutely good, and that is the case with so many different initiatives, right? You know, somebody might start something, be the catalyst for getting it started. Other people come on board,
right?
And that's I think that's really a good way, so that you're not always person dependent about something, right? Oh, so and so can't do it anymore. Oh, well, I guess nobody would do it. No, you want to be able to. If something is serving a constructive role, you want to be able to integrate other people in. So that there's, it's called succession planning, right? You're not going to be here all the time doing the same thing. So that's good. That's good. So a lot of different roles. Now, you did mention going away to business school.
I did.
That's something about you I did not know. You want to just share a little bit about that?
Yes, I from the moment I was in high school, I think I was a junior, and you know, your school counselors would sit down with you and work with you on your plans for graduation and going on further to college maybe, or technical school or whatever. And I knew that I always wanted to be, at that point it was called secretary. I enjoyed doing the skills. I believe it or not, I didn't learn shorthand in high school, but I did when I went to business school. I went to Bryan and Stratton, what was then business school.
Yes, yes.
In Buffalo.
In Buffalo?
Yep.
Oh my, I was about to guess Syracuse. So you went to Buffalo.
They have one in Syracuse, and I went to Buffalo because my mother's dear friend that she worked with at the telephone company, her husband was a guidance counselor in Newfield School District, and he knew somebody in Bryan and Stratton. And so we went there for a visit, and they felt that that was the best business school that I could attend, and it was.
That is so awesome. So in Buffalo, what, 2.5 hours away from Ithaca, so it was residential? I mean, you stayed over there?
I did, and it wasn't like college dorms that I stayed at, because it was a business school.
Sure.
They didn't have actual dorms, but they had a house that was about a block and a half away from the school.
Wow.
And actually it was more like probably a block and a half Ithaca blocks, but like about 4 blocks, Buffalo blocks. And so it was within walking distance of the school. But it was a house that had a couple that kept it, and they lived in the house. And they were like our house mother and father, I guess they were called. And there were about 14 rooms and this house was just for the students at Bryan and Stratton.
Wow.
And so they had a kitchen downstairs that had about 3 or 4 stoves, and had washing machine and dryer, and we had our own lockers that we could put our kitchen things in, or things that we wanted to store in there.
So I got to say this. Now, you said you learned shorthand.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of the people listening and watching this have ever seen shorthand. You talk about some chicken scratch.
That's a good point.
That is absolutely amazing. I have seen shorthand and said, you mean people learn how to do this?
Yeah.
And this is intelligible to somebody?
Right. At least to the user. It's so funny that now when I take my own personal notes, like for instance, I might be taking sermon notes, I'll write some things in longhand, some parts in shorthand, because like you learn what's called shortcuts or shorthand to the shorthand.
Well, I call it scribbling. Not to be offensive, but that is amazing to me. So I didn't even know I knew somebody that knew how to do shorthand. You know what else? You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
I associate you with calligraphy.
Yes.
See?
Thank you for these reminders.
But see, Lisa, that's what's so good about this. We're just sitting here having a conversation.
I love it.
And we're talking, and all of a sudden, just out of the blue, calligraphy.
Yep.
Yeah.
With the writing. How I came about calligraphy, when I was working at Cornell, I worked at Cornell. Now it's been about 10, 15 years since I've been there, but I worked there for about 30 years.
Wow.
And when I was fairly new there, maybe within my first 5 years, there was one of the ladies that worked in the same department that I was in. She took up calligraphy. She was in the Alumni Affairs office, and they were trying to, like make things special, like name cards or maybe invites. And she took calligraphy, and I saw her writing, and she showed me what she was doing, and I saw even the effects of what she was doing. It's like, oh my goodness, I would love to do that. And so I took a class, and the person that taught it, her first name happened to be Lisa also, so we clicked right away. But she taught me, and it's been quite a few years, but I still have some, I don't have like the actual ink and pen that was used then, but I have markers that every now and then I'll.
Yeah. While I don't remember the details, you did something for me in calligraphy. I don't remember what it was, and I think that's why it came to mind, because we were talking about shorthand and writing, and all of a sudden calligraphy. Calligraphy is beautiful.
It is.
It
is.
I don't mean any disrespect, but shorthand is just scribbling. So, no, I'm just kidding,
No,
folks.
take
I don't mean to offend anybody, but not. You know what the
This
thing
same
is?
lady that did the calligraphy, that I saw do the calligraphy in my office, she also, I watched her do shorthand, and this was after I had been through business school, and her shorthand looked just like the shorthand in the book that we learned it from the Greggs. I think it's the Greggs shorthand.
Yeah, in all seriousness, in terms of shorthand, it's obviously a skill, it's an
Yes,
art,
sure.
and it's certainly something not everybody can do.
Right.
And so the fact that there are people who are able, you know, to decipher, number one, learn it,
Yeah.
and number two, use it, and number three, you know, to be committed to deciphering it. It's an art, it's a skill, you know, that people develop. I mean, like now, right now, quite frankly, you know, sometimes people look at a foreign language, whether it be one of the Asian languages or a particular Japanese or Chinese or something like that, and it may not make any sense to us at all, but it makes complete sense to people who are schooled in that, and it's their native language, and they've learned it. And same thing with shorthand, right? And so it's, you know, you can say the same thing about Morse code, right? Beep, beep, dot, dot, this, that, right? And like, that means something to somebody, but why? Because they've invested the time to learn. And so, so I will now think of you as speaking English, shorthand, and calligraphy, almost as foreign. Well, shorthand is definitely a foreign language, so that's good. That's good. So, well, since we're talking about foreign languages and stuff, and right now, these days, post-official graduation, I'm doing some things at the high school. I'm curious, did you take a foreign, I don't know why I'm asking this question, but did you take a foreign language at the high school?
It was funny when you mentioned that. I was thinking, I said, I did. I took, I know I took French, but it was in junior high, and then I took that for 4 years, and then I took Spanish for 4 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I figured out why. I said it's really the easiest language to learn of any of the languages that exist.
What, Spanish or French?
Spanish.
Spanish. I agree with you. I
Because of
took
the
Spanish as well.
structure of the sentences is much simpler. English is even considered harder than.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, English, yeah. That's a whole nother conversation about how confusing English can be compared to some of the other languages.
And I've considered, I wanted to dust that off and take, what is it? There's like a program that you can like listen to or look at online.
Oh yeah, there are several. Babbel is one.
Yeah.
Rosetta Stone is another.
Rosetta Stone,
Yeah,
that's
there are
what I was
various
thinking
ones. So let's go back, because I want to connect. I want to get back to church involvement. So how long were you at Briggs and Stratton over in Buffalo?
Just 2 years.
Well,
Yep.
you say just 2 years, but that's a while, because you're away from your hometown. So
Right.
obviously you were not commuting to church, you know, at Calvary on Sunday mornings, you know, 5-hour round trip. So did you connect with the church over in Buffalo while you were away?
I have to say I did not.
Okay.
I would reconnect when I came back home, but that was one of the things I was thinking. I said that, you know, I probably would have enriched my life there, but I actually enjoyed just being there and learning about the city and
Right.
actually doing going to concerts.
Yeah. No, I hear.
love
Well, a big
concerts
city like
and
Buffalo, obviously, there are a
Yeah.
lot of opportunities to do that. And you know, going away to school. In your case, you went to Buffalo. In my case, I went to Salisbury, North Carolina, to school. And frankly, I you know, it's sad to say, but I can count on one hand the number of times I went to church, right? And but you know. So you came back and you got obviously reconnected to Calvary. I came back at the time I was living in Syracuse, got reconnected to Bethany, and you know, so we may, you know, not maintain church attendance while we're away for a while, but we go back to it. Why?
Right.
What does the scripture say? Train a child in the way.
They should
That
go.
they should go when they're older,
They will not depart from
because they got common sense, right? All
It
right.
flicks back in.
Right, also demanding parents, I'm sure. But no, this is good. And the reason I asked about that is, you know, again, you have a 60-something year history with Calvary. And I was just curious to know if you attended, even for a short time, another church, how you would compare and contrast that. So that was what I was looking to ask. So as you think about 60 plus years here, what are some of the things? Well, okay, before we talk about things, let's talk about people. Think about the last 60-something years. You came here as a little girl. You grew up here. Reverend Payne, you said, was here at the time. Oh my goodness! So,
and I think, yeah, because so based on the pastors that are pictured on the wall, I've been here for all but one of them.
Oh my goodness! Oh my God.
And I just realized, it's like, you know what? I think there's
wow.
10 pictures up there.
That is amazing.
I know it. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, yeah.
So you have seen a lot over the years.
Right.
You sat under the instruction and the teaching and the spiritual covering of a lot of different pastors.
Exactly.
Wow, there's a lot of relational connectivity there.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, when I was baptized, I read in my Bible, and it's good keeping, you know, notes in there, like where they have you fill in, you know, your family, and then when you're baptized, and I wrote in there that Reverend James Priest was the pastor.
When you got baptized?
Baptized, yes, yes.
Wow.
And he was very special. He had a real fatherly type way of him, you know, and we got to really connect with his family and his wife and children. And his children, as a matter of fact, we sang in the choir together in the, I don't know if it was considered a junior choir then, but
wow.
yes, us younger kids choir.
So the first thing I'm going to do when I put this mic down and this interview is over is go out in the narthex and look at that picture. And you were here during the pastorate of all but one of those people?
Yes.
That is a really long time.
And like Reverend Payne, it was like a little short time.
Well,
so
sure.
But
Sure. So who are some of the current members of Calvary who you kind of grew up with? Are there any that you can immediately think of?
Well, Stephanie Bibby, we called her Bibby at the
Okay,
time, and now her
okay.
her name is Lucina. Let's see.
And you okay? So that
and there's some adults, you know, as well. But you're talking about like about my age, or I think, is it just Stephanie?
Yeah, and see, that's why I asked the question, because again, I mean, I knew you had been here a long time, but I had no idea there was like 60-something years.
Yes.
And so as I was thinking about the congregation, I'm thinking about, say, who else, you know, was growing up around that time? Because you mentioned Stephanie and Kathleen and Carol, I know Carol McLean, you know, Reverend McLean's daughter, and so, and then Louise, but I think they were all a few classes behind you, right?
Because they were actually in the group with my cousin Kathy.
Kathy Love. Kathy Love, absolutely. That's right. So, yeah, so not very many folks around your age, you know, within 1 or 2 years. See, so there you go, right? You start thinking about these kind of things. So, okay, so a lot of different pastors, mothers of the church, you know, you mentioned Vivian Morgan and Ed Scott, and you mentioned Deacon Blanton. So, you remember Mother Cunningham?
I sure do. Oh my goodness, she was really funny.
You talk about a sweet lady,
and
yeah.
sweet. Oh my goodness, she was a true mother of the church.
She was.
And
you remember how she used to laugh?
Yes, yes.
I thought
I had a recognizable laugh, but yours.
I think her laugh was part of her amen and hallelujah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
And that was, I thought of that as part of her praise to the Lord.
That's exactly what it was.
Yes, it was.
And you know, and so thinking about her praise, how her praise manifested, and people do it in different ways, right? So let's talk about Mother Anita Reed.
Yes, I was going to bring her up. She was such a quiet spirit, but she loved the Word.
Yes, she did.
Loved the Word of God.
Yes, she did.
And you know, I learned a lot from her in terms of she taught Sunday school. That was one of the things she did. And she loved to look up all the scriptures and have us look them up. She would list them all and look them up. But I also, also struck me with her is her clerical and secretarial.
Yes, absolutely.
I learned a lot from her about that, and I credit her with my encouragement to at least keep up with the minutes or keep up. We used to use, now some of y'all listening might not know what this is, a mimeograph machine.
Oh yeah, I remember exactly what it is. Yeah.
And then I forgot what it was that we typed on that had like this. It wasn't the carbon part, but it was this part that had like this ink. It smelled really bad. But we used it to print off the bulletins. And she showed me how to print off the bulletins back in the day. And
was that a stencil or something like that?
It might, yes.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what it
I know
was.
exactly what you're about.
Yeah, because we would use the typewriter to type on it, and then print off the bulletins from there.
And Lisa, just think about it. There was no autocorrect back then.
No, there wasn't.
You know, folk today just don't know how easy they got it. Oh my goodness! You make a mistake, you got to do the whole thing over again.
And I remember that just even at working at Cornell when you know, like we would have reports that we'd have to update, and I was so glad when they came out with word processors. And you know, so I realize I've seen, you know, things come from the typewriter to a word processor to like IBM Selectric
right. Oh yeah,
computer.
remember that. But yeah, absolutely.
And even so, I jumped for joy when they started having the memory type typewriters or word processors. And so we've even been able to invest in some of that prior to the computer age.
Yeah. So let me ask this question. As you mentioned Mother Reed and talked about how she was an inspiration and helped influence you in a particular area. So again, 63 years growing up here, and so who are some of the other people who, as you think about growing up and being a part of this Calvary family and some of the older women that you may recall, is there anybody else that you can think of and just think about and share maybe how they may have impacted you or inspired you in some way?
I have two that come to mind. One of them is Vivian Morgan.
Oh,
this
yes.
Vivian Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
With her little bitty self.
With her little bitty self,
And
absolutely.
she was our neighbor that lived a block away on 2nd Street. And she's also my cousin Kathy and Jeff's grandmother.
Right.
But what was so unique about her, I loved how she came from all the way in the back of the church to the front of the church, strutted her stuff.
She sure did.
To come up and make the announcement.
That's right. And didn't she used to sit right back in that corner back there? There you go.
Yep.
All
Because
right.
she was an usher as well. But she even if she wasn't ushering, she was sitting in that actual seat. And I loved, she was so animated about giving the announcements.
Yes, she was.
And she wrote her announcements by hand, in longhand. And I remember when I would go to her house sometimes and see like legal-sized pieces of paper with her handwritten notes, and her handwriting was beautiful.
It was, I remember.
Beautiful. So
Yeah.
we have some very funny stories with her. One I want to share is like, if we would get, my grandmother Scott was an early bird. She loved getting up early. And from her days of, being on a farm when she was younger. And if we would get a phone call at like 5 or 6 in the morning, we knew it was Mrs. Morgan calling us to tell us that somebody had passed away.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Either that or else she would come to our door, knock on the door, and
give
then
you the
just
news
come
personally,
in.
yeah. So I'm trying to think, because I do remember her coming, as you say, from the back. I can visualize it now, decades later.
Right.
And she would come up, and didn't she typically use a phrase that sounded something like, as in recognition of visitors, you're not strangers, but friends we haven't met, or something like
That's
that.
right.
I used to love it. I love it. She was just that was a role tailor-made for her, and she did it very, very well. Very well. Well, that's good. So I'm always curious about how people's lives have been impacted, right, by different people over time. So speaking of
I
over,
have to say, I said two people, but prior to naming the second person, I wanted to also name Mrs. Annie Boone.
oh yes,
Because she was our next door neighbor, and she was head of the usher board. I remember she was on the usher board, and she also led, I believe, our Women's Day, because I remember that we would have like captains, and it, you know, it was a big fundraising thing, you know, back then. And so she would have people volunteer to be captains to raise money, and whoever raised the most money, they, you know, received this special recognition. But I always loved and remember her as an usher, and also being no nonsense.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
She was a good recruiter too. She recruited me to the
Yes.
usher board.
Oh, did she? Oh,
Absolutely,
okay.
I started on the usher
Oh,
board.
yeah, that's
absolutely.
right. Yeah. This is bringing back some great memories, because I was starting to think of some of the, you know, things that really stood out for me, and but you know, other things as well that
Yeah.
that are connected.
So let me. So I'm gonna ask you a two-part question.
Okay.
So over the course